It's my pleasure to introduce you to our colleague, Diederik Stolk. He's a leading expert in artificial intelligence, serious gaming, and crisis simulation, with a rich background in military and governmental consultancy. He's the co-founder of AI Advice and Training, the Netherlands' fastest-growing AI training and consultancy firm, and the director of Goldsworthy, Stolk and Associates. With his company, Diederik plays a crucial role in developing and facilitating for sophisticated games and military exercises for European governments and armed forces, with a focus on contemporary European conflicts, responsible AI in military applications, and command and control strategies. In addition, Diederik is a modeling and simulation expert here at NATO's Civil Military Cooperation Center of Excellence in The Hague. His work extends into academia, where he regularly lectures on serious gaming at esteemed institutions such as Utrecht University, the University of St. Gallen, and Northeastern University. With a specialization in crafting high-impact, rapid turnaround wargames and simulations, Diederik's work supports senior decision-makers in critical domains like crisis response, strategic foresight, and security planning. His innovation approach has made him a trusted advisor and service provider for organizations, including NATO, the Dutch Ministry of Defense, and major corporations. So it is a pleasure to have you here today with us, Diederik. The floor is yours for the next 20 minutes.
Thank you so much. That was a whole load. But in general, especially for the work that I am allowed to do for the CCOE, I have one of the best jobs in the world. I got to think all day and every day about how do I get people to play in a scenario or in a simulated environment or in a war game. Slide, please. Today I will talk a little bit about, can you hear me? Next slide, please. Fantastic. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about the work that we do at the CCOE with regards to wargaming, and which is pretty practical, I must admit. And why we do that, you can see in this slide. Very often, when it comes to wargaming, we think in tools, we think in assets, we think in units, we think in capabilities, we think MDO. But one of the key aspects that is often missing is the complexity of that which makes the operating environment even more complex, which is civilian space. So in this area, how do we deal with civilian institutions? How do we deal with non-governmental organizations? How do we deal with international organizations? How do we coordinate our information sharing? How do we coordinate roads? How do we deal with the uncontrolled movement of people, and so on, and so on, and so on. At the CCOE, we strive and we try to create that perspective, give our participants in our courses insights on this through gaming. Because through gaming, you create experiences that are tentative, long-lasting in your memory, and allow you to practice all your different faculties. Next slide, please. So, officially, I'm a modeling and simulation expert at the CCOE, but what modeling and simulation enables us to do within a CIMIC context is to explore real-world topics in a safe and controlled, and very important, low-cost, scalable environment. We either do so for education, training, and practice, i.e. create new skills, create new knowledge, and explore how to collaborate or cooperate with each other, as well as to improve decision-making. But we see this as these two different elements, and I also saw this reflected in the presentation of our US colleagues, which was excellent, by the way. Thank you. But it also creates a caveat for us, and that is, to what extent do we do real war gaming, and to what extent do we do serious gaming? And there is, for us, pretty gray line. So we are not purely solely doing COA war games, course of action war games. We are not solely wargaming just to test our plans or to test plans. No, we tend to use wargaming in educational settings, a little bit, and to a certain extent also with regards to concept development, but predominantly within an educational setting, because we provide training to everybody who goes into a CIMIC function within a NATO context. Next slide, please. All our courses include a war game. We have different courses. We have different types of courses, ranging from the higher command course that's currently ongoing, up till fieldwork staff worker course or resilience course on resilience. That means that depending on what kind of course it is and the subject, we have different kind of learning criteria and learning objectives, training objectives, and that we try to reflect either partially or fully within a war game. Our war games tend to be roughly 4 hours. And that is because we see that for the purposes that we use it, the 4-hour time span is basically the max that a participant is able to and willing to hold. We do sometimes break our games up into segments, and then we can do longer series, longer events, i.e. 4 hours, 8 hours, 12 hours. Within our kick branch, we are developing a wargaming capability. We want to do so to test new concepts and innovations. Next slide, please. So, we try to use our games and play at different levels, ranging from practicing at the strategic level to operational decision making to tactical decision making. And I would like to give you a few examples of this. So the first example is Analysia, which we developed for the analysis and assessment course, which is, by the way, Ralph's course, and it's excellent. And in that game, we use that game to let participants experience complexity of the operating environment and demonstrate the importance of civil factor integration. The unique thing about this game is that we start with an empty table and all these models on the side table, and we tell the participants to build up their world. And as they build up their world, they start allocating meaning to that which they have built up, which is akin to Lego Serious Play, which is a validated facilitation method used by Lego and many companies around the world. As the participants build up their world, they start attributing meaning to that which they have built up, and they are engaging in sense making. We play the game over a few days during our course, and as the course progresses, we can basically use different concepts and different models that come to fore during the course, relate them back to in-game experiences. And why we do that is that we connect tangible real-life experiences, i.e. I see, I do, I learn, I share, I play, i.e. co-ops learning styles, which are maybe a little bit discredited, but fine for now. And we relate them back to course content. And by doing so, the retention of course content is higher. Purely because I experience and I apply a method, a model, and a way of working. Next slide, please. We also use different games for training CIMIC skills, and they go beyond classical wargaming. But you can imagine that based on a operating environment that you simulate in a wargame setting, you have all these learning experiences that relate to deconfliction of activities, synchronization of activities, multi-stakeholder engagement, liaison activities, and all these other kind of tasks that CIMIC officers and CIMIC personnel tend to be responsible for. For example, we have a game which we call the Baltic Challenge. It's modeled on a city in the city of Daugavpils in Latvia. And in that game, participants play the various stakeholders that are present in that area, as well as at the higher level. So at the HQ level or within government. During the game, participants need to take decisions, influence each other, but also, based on the war game's outcomes, engage in negotiations. And that teaches them several different kind of hard and soft skills. And we get to explore topics such as host nation support. Great thing about this game is that once they've played the game, they can start relating course experiences or game experiences to topics later on in the course. Next slide, please. We have a game called Wise Ages. It's a game about resilience. It's probably the most often played game that we've played here over the last 2 years since I've been here. And it provides participants in 4 hours a real tangible experience in understanding the dilemmas at national level, resilience through civil preparedness, and thinking about baseline requirements. The game is played in rounds, and each round participants experience shocks which they need to overcome from a national perspective. In each team, we have, it might be a little bit akin to, for example, Pandemic, great game, focused on collaboration. In each team, we have different hats, so different roles, different perspectives that players bring in, and together they have to solve the shocks. And we ramp up complexity of the game per round. At the end of during this game, participants are tasked to develop simple plans and contingencies and present these plans as part of each round. And we basically simulate the outcome of their plans, just like in any other war game, to showcase the first, second, and third order effects of, okay, how does a shock to a baseline, to a certain baseline with regards to resilience, affect the other baselines, but also a military operation. As the complexity of the game increases over the rounds or over the turns, we add more and more of a military dimension to it. And we make the connection between, okay, so what is happening in the civil environment and how does that relate back to military deployment? Slide, please. And well, go back one more slide, please. Because I think with Wise Ages, for example, it's a very good way to also demonstrate and practice certain kind of thinking models that are dominant within the CIMIC space. So, for example, how do you work with UMAC? How do you work with the factor introduction conclusion model? How do you do civil factor integration? Goes on. We are currently also, and it's not on the slide, we're currently working on a new game, which is about multi-domain operations and CIMIC in relation to MDO, where we are looking at an area of operations and everything that's going on in that area. We are looking at an operational design and everything that, basically details a campaign on the highest level, the operational strategic level, and we're looking at MDO. So what kind of which effects do you want to generate in the various dimensions? So cognitive, virtual, and the third one, Ralph, you gotta help me out here. Psychological. Next slide, please. I think our US colleagues really, really well explained their development process, which, I'm pretty envious on. It's a big team that you have. We also have a development process, and that revolves around our 3 key branches. So KIC, T&E, lesson learned, analysis, where we try to distill from the insights that we gain from lesson learned and analysis, new ideas and concepts for new games to include in our courses through KIC, and we execute through training and education funds. So that enables us to, 1, understand the future operational and tactic CIMIC requirements that we should be addressing as the CCOE. It allows us to test and validate that which we are building, and in doing so, we contribute to development of new models and simulations. We are more and more trying to work out how we can connect with other stakeholders in our KIC activities. Next slide, please. One more thing that I should mention about how we develop our war games, or any of our games, is we have a very lean and agile approach where we work in iterations. It takes us roughly at least 3 iterations of a game design process in order to create a functioning, reliable, repeatable, and even scalable game. Our process consists of 4 phases, meaning first we scope, what do we want to design, and why do we want to design it? Then we build, we get into a prototype or concept, we test, third phase is testing, test that prototype with players, either of our own, with our colleagues, or in a classroom setting. Then we review in order to scope the next version of the development of the game. We also acknowledge that there's still a challenge where we see when we look to within the CIMIC community about using games for the development and concept development and experimentation. And that is often there is little knowledge about wargaming within our space, especially the CIMIC space, or it is perceived as very abstract, intangible, and not relatable to mil ops. And I'm being very blunt right now. However, there's also an increasing awareness of the value that wargames provide, and you see it throughout NATO, in my opinion. But it's very clear that games provide safe, controlled, cost-effective environments. We should be using them more. Next slide, please. The too long did not read version of my presentation. So the summary. So at the CCOE, we have all these wonderful games that we use for various purposes to basically cater to the needs of CIMIC personnel or future CIMIC personnel. That means that most of the games that we currently have are used within a T&E environment, so in a training and education environment. We are developing our KIC wargaming capability in order to improve our analysis, using wargames for analysis purposes. We are constantly developing and rolling out new games. I've been building roughly 7 or 8 games this year for the CCU alone, which we have deployed in the field, so at courses. We are trying to establish a CIMIC wargaming community because, as we all know, there are many wargame designers throughout NATO who are dealing or trying to figure out some way how to represent the civil environment within a NATO context. And we believe that if we can establish a CIMIC wargaming community, we can better make use of all that knowledge, as well as harmonize activities. This concludes my briefing. Pending any questions, over to you, Alpha.